Hi, I'm Kelly and welcome to Kapowski Reads and happy Mixtape-athon. Yeah, that's a thing. For the next 2 weeks I am planning to make my way through the Autumn Mixtape-athon TBR. So the plan is that I have 5 books that I'm going to be reading. I mentioned them in my wrap-up video, but I will quickly go through them again. They are Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson, Blackwater Sister by Zhen Cho, The Girls Who Disappeared by Claire Douglas, The Snow Child by Owen Ivy, and Powers of Darkness by Valdimar Ásmundsson and Bram Stoker. He translated it. Fun story, I highly recommend looking it up. But I will probably mention it when I come back to tell you all about that book. So my plan is that I am going to read the books, and after I finish the book, tell you what I thought about it. That feels like an achievable goal. I am a remarkably dull person. My life is pretty much just I work, I craft, I read. I don't really go and do anything that exciting other than, you know, little walks, little trips to coffee shops. So there may be some of that splattered about in the vlog too, but it's just going to be a very chill couple of weeks and I hope you enjoy it and I hope I enjoy the books. The first book I'm going to be reading is For Nature on the Cover. So I'm going to be starting with Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson, which seems like it's going to be a really fun small town witchy book, which I am very much in the mood for. So hopefully I love it. I will return back with updates. I'm back with my first update. I'm very proud of myself for not waiting till the weekend to remember to film. Last night was the Mixtape-athon opening ceremony. No, because it's not the Olympics, but I can't remember what it was called. Opening ceremony. Let's go with that. That sounds... I love that level of drama. So there were reading sprints galore, which was so much fun. I actually was working in the office yesterday and it was cold and it was rainy and stormy and horrible. So by the time I got home, I just wanted to go to bed. And the opening show started at 7. So I had an early tea and just took myself to bed and joined in some fun reading sprints. So I'm gonna count that as reading in a cozy space because I read in my bed. I had blankets, my boyfriend was reading as well. It was cozy. I had a nice peppermint tea. Good times. So tick. I also finished my first book, which was Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. This was a super fun witchy book with nature on the cover. So technically it could count for both the witchy prompt and nature on the cover, but I have plans for the witchy prompt. So nature on the cover it is. This book is all about Essie, who is a witch, and she lives in this really cool house called Bedlam House, which is this grand like manor home, which made me think of Addams Family. She lives there with a bunch of other witches. And then there's this newcomer to the village called Josh, and it turns out he's their landlord and they haven't paid rent since the 18th century. So things are gonna happen. I do not think that the blurb for this book does it justice, because this book was hilarious. It was so funny and it was so charming and it was spicy. I thought that this was a clean romance, which is fine. I got to maybe, like 70% through the book and was like, oh, there she goes. It got smutty. So if you are wanting some spice, this book has spice. And as is tradition, when I read a book that has spicy scenes, I like to perform a dramatic reading for my boyfriend, who has to try and make out what I'm saying between my giggles. This book made me not just giggle, it made me cackle, actually just cackling, because it was just so witty and I loved the characters. Let's take Josh out of the picture for the moment because I loved everybody apart from Josh. Everyone else was just super lovely. multi-dimensional characters. I loved the sort of found family vibes. The characters were charming. Josh was limp lettuce personified. He was dull, 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 dull. Josh was just super boring, and he committed the cardinal sin of fleeing danger, which is to stop and ask questions instead of fleeing the danger. No, he just had to ask that question right there and then. Oh, stupid. I hated Josh, but I loved everyone else. And the fact that I didn't like Josh, who was the love interest, that didn't really reduce my enjoyment of the book, because everything else made up for it. I just thought the story was so interesting because it kept growing and growing and growing, and there was a big bad, and I really liked trying to work out what was happening with the big bad and what they were gonna do, and I just thought it was exciting. And there were some twists that I did not see coming, which was great. It really added to my enjoyment. I thought this was just a perfect October read. I wanted something fast-paced, something sweet, something fun, and something kind of maybe not quite super spooky because I'm a wimp, but I wanted something that was gonna give me, you know, Halloween type feelings. And witches and, you know, demons definitely met that brief, and I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It was so much fun. Yay! Tick! 2 ticks. 2 ticks. Get going. On the live show, a lot of people were talking about their TBRs, which is so much fun. I love knowing what other people are going to read, and a lot of people were mentioning some books that made me kind of think, maybe I want to change my TBR. And I sort of think, is it cheating to change your TBR on day 3 of a 14-day readathon? And maybe it is, maybe it's not, but I'm going to. So I am having 2 swaps because I want to. I'm going to be swapping my witchy / woman in total control of herself book. I was going to be reading Blackwater Sister by Zen Cho, and I do still really want to read this book, but I want to read Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson a little bit more. So gonna be swapping those 2 books. And I'm also swapping my unseasonal read from The Snow Child by Owen Ivy to All the White Spaces by Ali Wilkes. And I wanted to swap this book in because I really just wanted something a little bit terrifying to read, which I will look back at this vlog and be like, what were you thinking? Because I don't like scary things. But snow, look at all this snow. Could it be any other month than season than winter? Maybe, but no, going winter. I really want to read this. So I've changed 2 of my picks and I regret nothing. I will report back when I have more updates. I have now finished book 2 of my Mixtapeathon TBR. I have finished the free square, or the prompt that is inspired by my favourite autumnal bop, and I read The Girls Who Disappeared by Claire Douglas. And this was kind of like a thriller. I say like a thriller, it was a thriller, and it's about one night 4 young women were out and driving back from the club, and there was a car accident, and then 3 of the women disappeared. The book is set 20 years later. There is a journalist who is wanting to do a podcast about the mystery of these missing women, and the journalist receives some threatening messages, so it seems like someone or some people don't want her snooping around. So that sounded pretty exciting. I didn't really like the characters in this book at all. And I think what I'm just trying to, you know, pussyfoot about saying is that I didn't like this book. I hate when I don't like books. I feel guilty because somebody tried really hard to write something And I'm here going, I didn't like it, but I didn't like it. I'm trying really hard to think about things that I did like about it. I liked the sort of supernatural elements that were woven in. I just wish that there was more of that because that would have been quite exciting. And I like that the police officer, Dale, was not an annoying police officer. That was fun. I didn't overly like anything else, so I'm gonna move on. And that's a super quick update, but I am off out tonight, so I'm very excited. I'm going to go and see Sophie Hagen in the Lemon Tree in Aberdeen, which is a really gorgeous little venue, so I'm so excited about that. I'm meeting some friends for some drinks and some food before we go, and it feels so strange to be going out. I was not a sociable person pre-Panny D, but it feels really weird to be going out. So yeah, I'm excited. But before I go, I do want to share my book mail because I got a book today. I received a copy of Ginger and Me by Alyssa Suave? I'm not super sure, but I will learn how to pronounce that surname. This is a book by a Scottish author. I have been told that this book has similar vibes to Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, which is one of my favourite books. So this book comes to me extremely highly recommended, and I have read a whole bunch of my existing TBR, so I was allowing myself to buy a new book, and it was this one. So I'm very excited to read this, and now I'm gonna go and get ready to go off it. Bye! I am one more book down. I have finished my witchy book and I went with Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson, which was a swap, but I'm okay with that. HMRC are a bunch of witches who are tasked with basically protecting the country from evil, bad times. And there's a prophecy, which is always fun, and a group of friends who were friends in childhood, now all grown up in their 30s, have to basically get the gang back together in order to basically save the world and stop the prophecy from destroying the world. I had hoped for a little bit more, like, I want to say drama between the adult characters, because they're all about my age and I really liked the idea of, you know, old high school friends getting back together and their dynamics being different now that they're all grown up and have moved on with their lives. I really would have liked a little bit more about that change in dynamic. I think that would have been really fun. I didn't really enjoy the younger characters. I found Snow to just be the most annoying character ever. I don't like Snow, and I honestly don't think if she features heavily in the next book that I can read it. I thought the villains were very villainous, Disney-esque in villainy. Well, the sun is setting, so I have to put a light on. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more from Theo's point of view. I feel like as one of the main characters, I would have liked to have known a bit more about them, and I'm hoping that in the second book, maybe I will get that. I absolutely loved the ending of this book. Oh, I think that it's worth reading the entire book just for that last chapter. I feel that strongly about how good it was. I loved the Spice Girl references. I always wanted to be Posh Spice, but I ended up having to be Ginger Spice, which I didn't want to be Ginger Spice, and I'm still salty about that. I didn't want to be Jerry. I wanted to be Victoria. I wanted to be chic. So yeah, I'm still bitter about that. It's really hard to describe this book without giving away huge spoilers. So let me just summarize it by saying it was an enjoyable book about witchy politics and female friendship and Spice Girl references. So another tick, and I'm feeling very good about hopefully finishing my books before the end of this fortnight. I'm going to be a little quick with this update because my dinner is cooking and I'm so hungry, and I want to be poised to get it the second that rice cooker goes and my rice is ready. So I finished another book, yay! And this time it was, what is my hair? Let's go with that. And this time it was my translated fiction, my translated book, and it is Powers of Darkness by Bram Stoker, translated by Valdimar Ásmundsson, and then translated again by a whole gang of people, all of whom are named at the back of the book and would take an age for me to read out. So this book is one of my, let's be honest, this is probably one of my favourite stories about a book existing. The story is, in 1901, Valdimar Ásmundsson was given the task of translating Dracula into Icelandic. And the book that he translated ended up being Makt Merkrana, which translates to Powers of Darkness. And I apologise, my Icelandic is terrible. And then everybody went happily along reading Dracula, reading Powers of Darkness. And then in 1986, it was discovered that Powers of Darkness was not a faithful translation at all. Then a whole project was undertaken to translate Powers of Darkness back into English. Amazing. So basically, this is the lost Icelandic translation of Dracula. And I love Dracula. Dracula is probably my favourite classic. I own far too many copies of it, and I read it at least once a year. I'm due to read it soon. I've been waiting till October to read it. And this book is not Dracula, but it's still enjoyable. And I think that a huge part of my enjoyment of this book is because I love Dracula. I think if I didn't love Dracula so much, maybe I wouldn't enjoy this book quite as much, because a lot of it feels very sudden, very sudden. I mean, the climax of this book is over in about half a page, but the story behind this book is what I think makes it so enjoyable. There are footnotes all throughout the book, so loads of footnotes that just sort of explain the process behind translating the book back into English and sort of the thought process behind some of Valdimar's changes. And changes, there are many. So first of all, this book is about half the length of Dracula. Trimmed it quite a bit. And it takes place almost entirely at Dracula's castle, which is not the same as in the classic. The character names also are different. There's no Jonathan Harker, there's no Mina. We've got Thomas and Wilma. So that straight away, as soon as I read that, I was like, yes, I am in for, it's going to be a bit different. And there are new characters who have been added, and there are entire storylines that have been cut out. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It focuses more, because it takes place more at the castle, it really delves into the creepiness of Dracula and his castle and what's going on there. And I think that that's really enjoyable, because when I read Dracula, I always think, oh, I really want more of that creepy castle, because I'm a girl who loves a creepy castle. And I think that reading Powers of Darkness increases my enjoyment of Dracula. It's not a book that I would read instead of Dracula, but I will read it in addition to. So I just think it's such a fun read. It's just so fascinating that this book exists. And I don't think I'll ever stop talking about how fascinating it is. I also highly recommend, if you do read this, to read the bit at the beginning. There's maybe about 60 pages that explain the whole process that went into retranslating this book back into English. The effort that has been made is just immense, and it's just such an interesting story inside the book and about the book. So I absolutely thought it was just, it just makes my brain so happy to just find out all of these things. And the footnotes definitely enhanced my enjoyment of this book. I also think some of the footnotes get a little bit sassy, which is always fun. I love a sassy footnote. And yeah, I just think that this is such an interesting book. It's probably one of my favourite translated books, which feels like a bit of a cheat. I class this as one of my favourite classics. I know it's a bit of a cheat because it's maybe not a classic. This translation is recent, it only came out a couple of years ago, but the book that it was translated from came out in 1901, so I feel like that counts as a classic, and it's definitely translated, so I'm taking that as a tick. And I'm gonna accept that. But now I need to go and get my rice because I'm so hungry and my rice is ready. So today I finished my unseasonal read for Mixtapeathon, which was All the White Spaces by Wilkes. And this was a substitution, and let me tell you, that was the right decision by me of the past. So yay, well done. Thank you, me of the past, because I loved this book. I loved it. This book takes place in 1919, 1920, and is all about a failed expedition to Antarctica. And the main character, Jonathan, is hiding a huge secret from the other men in the party. He isn't the only one. There are secrets galore, and they're all sort of struggling with the ghosts of their past. So they're all on a boat on the way to Antarctica, and tragedy happens, and they all have to abandon ship. They're stuck somewhere that isn't even on any maps, and there's no search party coming, and it is just a story of basically their survival. In addition to that, it kind of seems like they're not the only ones there. There's something or someone who is after them and is trying to lure them out into the snow. And I love this book so much. It was haunting. I don't like the dark. I hate the dark. The idea of this book took place in Antarctica during overwinter, which basically means no daylight at all. It was terrifying to read about, and just sort of reading about all of the men there just slowly turn on each other, and you know, there's only so much that the human brain can take before it starts giving a little bit. There were so many moments where I was trying to work out, has madness set in, or is this really happening, or is it happening in their head? And I really enjoy that sort of element in a sort of horror where I don't know as a reader if the events are actually happening. So I'm there along with the characters, just getting spooked and spooked and spooked. And I just thought this was such a terrifying but enjoyable read. And I loved Jonathan as a character. I just loved Jonathan getting to live as his true gender in the harshest of circumstances. Like, it was such a tough book, but it was such an enjoyable read, and I just didn't want to put it down. I absolutely loved it. I also loved Jonathan's relationship with Harry. Harry had gone off to war with Jonathan's brothers, and only Harry had come back. I kind of really enjoyed the sort of what felt like quite realistic portrayal of people who had suffered loss in the war, because he was a wee tortured soul, and the last thing he probably should have been doing was going on an expedition to Antarctica, but he did. I loved the way that Jonathan and Harry just looked out for each other, and I loved the way that their relationships grew with the rest of the crew, and I really loved the way that Jonathan just grew in leaps and bounds and gained so much confidence in themselves. I just loved Jonathan as a character. This was such a sort of Moorish book. Even though it was terrifying, I didn't want to put it down. I wanted to keep reading. I wanted to know who was going to make it, because you don't expect a failed Antarctic mission. You don't expect everybody to make it back. And there were a lot of characters in this book, so it was kind of, I didn't want to become too attached to them in case they didn't make it. But I found myself getting really attached to them and just trying to work out what secrets they were all hiding. They were all just wee tortured souls, and I was hooked. I fell in love with the characters, and the story just kept me on edge. I was on the edge of my seat. I just wanted to keep reading it. This just, oh, it really just, it gave me the spooks, but it also just, oh, we've had a cold spell, and I don't know how much of that cold spell recently is real and how much of it is because I've been reading about a book with snow. I don't know, but I love this book. Highly recommend it. I'm so glad that I swapped it in. I utterly loved it. I loved it. This was my, I have to say, this was my favourite book of the entire Mixtape-a-thon, and I'm so glad that I swapped it in. It was, I started on a high, I finished on a high. I have thoroughly enjoyed my Mixtape-a-thon reading. I've gotten through all my 5 books. I have done almost all of my self-care prompts. I still need to watch a fun sort of autumnal film, and I'm kind of trying to decide which one to go with, but I will. And then that will be me. I feel a sense of achievement. If you've participated in Mixtape-a-thon, I'd love to know how you got on with it too. It was so much fun. And if you've read any of these books or anything else that you would love to talk about, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye!